Brian Lerner, board certified employment lawyer, one of 200 in the state of Florida out of 115,000 lawyers, I guess. I can say I'm an expert in employment law. Never knew I wanted to get in this area of law. Fell in love with it day one. First case was a male-on-male sexual harassment case in 1999.
Wow.
Didn't exist. I was looking at emails, unheard of back then. Still emails were relatively new. And I'm like, they're paying me to look at pornographic emails and like, what is this work? This is amazing. And fell in love with it and have been doing it ever since. I represent mostly companies, but I also represent what I call the deserving individual from time to time in cases. Represent individuals in contract negotiations, severance negotiations. I help with handbooks. I do diversity training, although that's toned down a little bit given the current times that exist out there. But that's basically the nature of my practice.
Yeah, things have changed, I guess, with a lot of, the Supreme Court law and politics, but we'll stay away from the politics. But, I think I got introduced to you. I think we sat on the board of directors at some point. I may have known you before then, but we sat on a board of directors for Legal Aid. I know you're super, engaged in the community.
Right.
And I just saw, like sometimes it's like you meet someone, it's like, a lawyer's lawyer. Like that's how I think of you, as like someone like as a lawyer, I go to advice from another lawyer. Right. You're that guy, and it's, I'm sure you probably deal with a lot of, really high end, whether it's the legal teams of big companies and things like that, right?
Yeah. So I started off in what they call big law. And did that for many years, and that gave me access to Fortune 500 companies where I'm dealing with what some people may see as bigger problems. And I was only representing companies at that time and dealing with in-house counsel, as they call it, in their legal departments. But since leaving and going on my own, which would have been in 2010, best move I ever made was to go out on my own and practice with some friends. I've been able to represent a variety of different people and have found that variety of work really helps, from small companies that have no HR managers, they have no in-house legal department. So I'm just dealing with owners of companies and dealing with their problems. And I love taking on those problems personally and taking them on my own shoulder to try to help the client in that regard.
You know what's great about your business too and your area is that it's so scalable. There's just so many employers, And then, like you said, there's the deserving individual where you'll represent an employee, something goes wrong, something goes south, or they get completely screwed over.
Right.
You'll take a look at those kind of cases too.
So what I've heard is that 50% of a company's problems are the employees. And now being my own business owner, right? I went from being an employee to being now effectively a business owner. I wouldn't call it a problem, but it is one of the things I didn't anticipate in being an owner in my own firm is that was actually what takes up most of my time, right? Is working on employee issues and dealing with that for myself. And so I can see how companies, that is the major problem, right? Whether it's their, employee happiness and morale, whether it's wage issues, whether it's someone's complaining about a boss at work. All those things are, labor is the biggest part of what everyone does for, their company. And so it ends up being very scalable in that sense.
Yeah. So I've reached out to you. You've helped me draft the policies and procedures for my office, different things that come up. I reach out to you for advice because I like to know these things. And you're someone that I trust completely when it comes to employment law. And what's interesting is whenever I make a video on employer-employee videos, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram, right, the overwhelming response, if I'm going at it from an employer perspective, is negative from the audience. And I realize that most people are going to be on the employed side as opposed to the employer side. And so I had to think about that whenever I was making videos, because you really got to take a view from the shoes of the employee, whether it's hiring or whether it's termination or whether it's, like you said, it's morale or how they are operating in a company. How do you see it? Do you see that also sometimes?
So I see a couple things. I always see no one believes in HR. They always think HR takes the company's position. Mm-hmm. So every single employee has a negative view of HR personnel. And remember, HR personnel are just employees too, right?
Yeah, you got a point.
But the way I really operate in terms of being an employment lawyer, whether it's for the individual or for the company, is I say if you do what's fair, you always end up doing what's right. So you don't need to worry what the law is. But if you do what's fair, you always end up doing what the law necessarily requires, which ends up being you doing right. And so I always take that perspective in everything I do. But yes, overall, I would say no one is on the side of the company. In your work that you see, the companies are big for a reason and people think they're out to get employees. But the reality is most companies just want to do what's right. They may be motivated by money.
Yeah.
But they're not looking to purposely discriminate against people or oppress people. Sure, they may want to pay you less wages to maximize profit, but they're not going to violate the law on purpose to try to deprive you of wages. I really do believe that.
When you think about like the companies that you work with or work for, which are the companies that thrive the most as far as how they engage with their employees? And the way that I'm looking at it is I'm a small business owner.
Right.
And like one of the huge things that I have is having like really great core values for our team, principles for our team. We have weekly meetings. We do events like we had our firm retreat. I think like that's so important for the culture. What do you see as far as like businesses that thrive the most in the way they work with their employees?
So I have a Fortune 50 company, and they bend over backwards to do everything they can for employees. And surprisingly, you would think being such a large company, they would have a lot of lawsuits, and they don't. They actually are my least, I would say, productive client in the sense that like for a business standpoint.
Yeah, sure.
And so a lot of it is they solve it by having people on the ground who can address issues right away. And they're constantly looking at ways to improve. Now, I don't think most companies, right? We're in South Florida right now. Most companies are 30 or less employees. They're not gonna be able to do that kind of thing. I look at it from my perspective, what do we do? I'm not sure if there is a model. Like I try, okay, maybe full transparency. Employees wanna see everything. And then I find out it's too much information. They don't like it. And then they're unhappy. Well, let's give less. Then they're feeling they don't get included on stuff. I just find it's like, it's kind of like a trial and error thing. You just gotta like see what works for you. But I do believe in, you know, what's interesting, near the holiday season, I always thought most employees would rather get a check than go to a holiday party.
You sure?
And you know what it ends up being? No, they don't. They want the holiday party.
Yeah.
They recognize, you know, work is like family. You spend more time at work than you do at home.
Yeah.
That's just the culture in this country. And they're okay with having a dinner and feeling appreciated than maybe if they got $50, $100, $150 extra in a paycheck. That's an interesting thing for me. So it's a constant learning process. And I think every workplace is different. You just got to do what feels right for you. We do less meetings because people don't like meetings in our office. Yeah. For you, meetings may work, you know? And so I just look at it, you just got to be proactive and reactive.
Yeah, no, I agree. The like too many meetings is a problem. We do with our office, we have a Friday meeting. It's it's always on the schedule, 10:30. We have an agenda. It's about an hour long, but this way we kind of run through this past week. We run through the next week. We kind of know where everyone's going to be. We look at the calendar. I think everyone enjoys it. I mean, it's kind of like it's a get together, and then it's also a round table. So whenever people have questions, I think it ends up saving time. So like I batch any questions. Like people don't come into my office all the time and have questions. They bring it to the Friday meeting. Right. We run through it, and it makes it kind of nice.
Do you have like a hard 1 hour stop?
No, there's no hard 1 hour stop. I mean, if we start at 10:30, we're done at 11:30. Maybe done at noon. Maybe done a little bit sooner, but we do have like the agenda, and it's kind of like the same thing. We just run through it. We see which cases we signed up, make sure each of those clients are getting taken care of for the past week or so. And then, but it's definitely something. Then we go through our core values too, which is something I learned at my other law firm. Was kind of just like we do a core value of the week and a principle of the week. One big thing that we do, and I don't know if you maybe you see this, I'm trying to think employment law, but is trying to make sure that everyone knows to be careful about emails they open. I don't know if you see it in your, but there's so much spam and there's attachments, and so many things now are beginning to look legitimate. It's like a voicemail or like something, and you can completely bring down your whole law firm.
I got like a week and a half ago, our managing partner, it was an email from him, or it looked like it was from him.
Yeah.
And it said, "Hey, Brian, I'm going to be in the office late. I need something for you. Can you get something for me?"
Yeah.
And it looked legit, but if you hover over the email address, you could see.
Did you catch it right away?
Oh, I caught it right away because I've seen that, and I actually have clients that do a lot of they test employees on their cyber awareness, where they will do those dummy tests like that to see if they'll click the link, and then they do, and then they're busted, and then they don't fire them, they just make them go through training.
So I had an associate. I won't get into names or anything like that because he'll probably watch this. But
I hope you have more than one associate.
I had an associate but at the time he's not here anymore. But and he'll probably see this. But he legitimately, it was like his first week on the job. He got an email. It said it was from me. Yeah. If he hovered over, he would have seen it was from something random. He ended up going all the way to Walgreens to buy like gift cards because he was being asked by somebody who got his cell phone number, this whole thing. You just got to be so careful, Really
careful. And we don't have like the filter to say there's an outside attachment, careful link, and you see that in a lot of people's emails. Like when you reply back to them, you see like external email. That is a problem, but that's really good that you have those check-ins. I think those are important. I found for us, I think that works the most in the office, people really love the social events.
Yeah.
I think like we did a Thanksgiving lunch and people really loved it. We'll have the holiday party that people want. You know, they love that. We did a social event. We went bowling with everyone. That kind of team building and camaraderie. And you really break down and get to talk to people about their lives. You find out they have children, they don't have children, you know, what their dating life's like. You know, I do employment law and people say you're no fun. Like all you teach us is to not have fun. And I'm like, I don't want it to be that way. You can have fun. It's just within limits and recognizing that some people may feel uncomfortable with the conversation and just being aware. Right. And if you see that they're visually unhappy with it, just end the conversation. It doesn't mean you can't have fun.